Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
It is Season 4, Episode 41. We got a lot to talk about today, Austin. We've got the Steelers' win over the Indianapolis Colts last Sunday, of course, which improved the Steelers' record to 4-4, and we'll delve deeper into Bud Dupree's breakout season, which saw him being named AFC Defensive Player of the Week this past week, the rash of injuries that the Steelers have incurred this year, and of course Mason Rudolph's continued progression this year. But first things first, let's get to the injury report from Sunday's game. The Steelers' battered running back position continues to take more hits.
In game, we saw Trey Edmonds get hurt at the end of the game. He took a rib injury, and he did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday with that rib injury. Then Ryan Switzer hurt his back, which kept him out of practice Wednesday, but on Thursday he was fine. That was significant because he was supposed to be the emergency running back, so now you're down James Conner at this point, you're down Benny Snell, you're down Trey Edmonds, and now you're down your emergency running back, but he seems to be okay, which is good. And then you're down your other emergency running back, which is Rosie Nix. He re-injured his knee, and it's kept him out of practice through Thursday. I do not expect him. I'm not sure he'll play again this year, to be honest. Re-injuring the same knee is pretty tough. Like, once you get that injury, it's just tough to come back from. And then outside the game, Tyson Alu hurt himself in practice, joining the injury report Thursday as a non-participant with a knee injury. Then James Conner, Ramon Foster, and Benny Snell do not appear to be quite ready yet. Foster and Snell have not participated in practice through Thursday, and Conner went from limited to a non-participant from Wednesday to Thursday, so that is not ideal going forward. But yeah, that's all the injuries from the Steelers front.
We saw a couple moves made. It looked as though James Conner might be returning when they released Darren Hall from the practice squad, a running back, and re-signed former 6th-round pick Sutton Smith from this past season. He was cut before, during the initial roster cutdowns, if you remember that. They brought him back for just a couple days, and now they seemingly have pivoted and have released Smith for Darren Hall again. So it looks like I would have to think that this is signaling that James Conner is not going to be available for Sunday's game, and it's just another indication that they wanted more depth at the running back position. So Sutton Smith could be back, but I have a feeling that this is showing that Conner's not going to be able to go on Sunday.
Without a doubt, it just doesn't look good. I mean, they're giving him this non-participation day probably because he doesn't feel great on it. Maybe hope that on Friday he feels really good from getting another day off. But it does not look good, and I wouldn't bet on him being ready to play.
So the guy who's going to have to shoulder most of the load, as he did on Sunday, was Jalen Samuels. And let's kind of segue into the game now. The Steelers are able to come away with a close 26-24 victory. The offense kind of slugged through. They didn't put up pretty numbers, but the guy who had probably the biggest day all around was Jalen Samuels. He was pretty ineffective on the ground, only totaling 10 yards on 8 carries, but he caught a team record 13 passes for a running back for 73 yards. I thought he was pretty solid on the day, but he did have a crucial fumble. I thought his day was pretty emblematic of the entire offense. It did just enough to win the game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There wasn't really much. I mean, you started off pretty hot with the added long run from Trey Edmonds, but after that, the run game just kind of disappeared. He finished with 12 for 73, which actually looks like a pretty decent line, but when you factor in that one of the carries was for 45, and you look at it as, oh, wow, I could do math, 11 for 28, like, that's not good at all. Like, that's what you're left with after you take off that one carry for 45. So rushing as a whole on the day wasn't very effective. You didn't have anyone with really, super long runs besides that Trey Edmonds run. But at least they weren't doing it consistently. But, yeah, the whole offense, I felt like struggled going into the second half. They were doing okay in the beginning, but they weren't very effective. Like, in the red zone, they weren't scoring touchdowns. This was a lot of field goals in this game from Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell really got tested here. And he did well. He had all 4 of his field goals and both of his extra points. So he did well here. But this game was a game won on field goals because the red zone offense was not effective enough as it should have been.
1 for 4, and as you mentioned, the offense, I guess we can kind of start with them because we'd already talked about Samuels, but that opening drive and interception that really should have been caught by Juju Smith-Schuster, even if the throw was a little high. It felt like, I don't know if Rudolph, I don't know, this is tough because I watched the game after the fact, so I didn't get that live feeling of the game that you probably got when you were watching, but I just felt like the offense, not that it changed a whole lot after that interception, but I really feel like it was just not the way you wanted to start the game, and the Colts turned that into 3 points right off the bat, and they did move the ball, as you said, in the first half, but those crucial mistakes, that interception, that 4th and 2 play, which I don't know if you want to touch on that shovel pass call to Juju Smith-Schuster that was stopped short of the line to gain. You've got an interception, a turnover on downs, and you've got 2 field goals. There were crucial mistakes made in the first half on offense that saw them wind up with just 6 offensive points in the first half. So not a great showing, and I was struggling to find something to hang their hat on. I mean, they were moving the ball, but what good is moving the ball if you can't punch it in?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that 4th and 2 play. I really actually like that play, but the problem is the Steelers don't run anything out of that formation besides that. It's just so predictable, especially with how much the Steelers run that play over the past 2 years. It's just such a predictable play that they need to, if they're going to keep using that play like that, because I actually do think that play works a good amount of the time if the team's not expecting it. Randy Fichtner needs to start running more stuff out of that formation other than that play. I feel like that's the only one you ever see out of a formation like that, and as soon as you see Juju moving, it's just it's like another gimmicky thing. But so it's hard for me to say because it's weird to say that I didn't like the play call, but I liked the play. It's kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but it's just it needs to be effective in a way that it's not expected. But yeah, the offense as a whole. Really made those key mistakes because the Steelers could have ran away with this. I mean, you look back and you see that Boswell made four field goals. So take one away because one's only there because Darius Leonard, and then I'll take 2 away because another one. Oh no! I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the same field goal. So we leave it at 3 field goals. That's 3 times they could have scored 4 more points, and they just were not able to. But so this could have been a runaway, really, if the Steelers just got it together on offense. It just they made those crucial mistakes that you said, and then for real, it's just they couldn't get anything going in the second half. It felt like.
I actually didn't hate the play call, and I've harped on that play before, but I don't know if you've seen it. Go back and rewatch the play. Deontay Johnson is open, and I don't know if that's the flat, and I don't know if he's just a decoy on the play, but if he's not, if he is, he shouldn't be. That play was open to Deontay Johnson, and it would have been a first down if Mason Rudolph had looked his way and thrown him the ball. So I don't know if that needs to be a new wrinkle added, but there needs to be something else done. I'd be okay with not using that play for maybe the rest of the year or at least a while, just because it's the only one you see in short yardage situations like that comes up time and time again. You don't see that the reserve tight end leaking out like Xavier Grimble did. We've seen that play twice called twice over the past 2.5, approaching 3 seasons now. I wouldn't hate seeing that play instead. But I'm just kind of going through my notes here. I'm trying to remember what I saw here because it has been a few days now. But I really felt like Mason Rudolph kind of changed after that interception. I know that he didn't exactly throw a ton of passes, but you like the way they started that first pass to Juju, and then a deeper ball to Smith-Schuster that went off his hands. I felt like a lot of what we saw from Mason Rudolph after that point was just underneath stuff. And again, it worked because the Steelers won, but I feel like we're having the same conversation with Mason Rudolph that we've been having since his first start back in San Francisco. We're not seeing him push the ball down the field enough, and I don't know why that is, but I'm not going to be convinced of this guy as a franchise quarterback until he starts doing that more.
See, I don't know. I feel like he's a franchise quarterback, but just not the one that's elite or like that. he reminds me of early on Alex Smith. Like, you remember Alex Smith before Andy Reid got there? Like, it was a joke. It was just dink and dunk game manager, and that's what I get a lot of. And he was good enough. I guess he's technically wasn't good enough to be a franchise quarterback. He got moved, but that's what he reminds me of personally. I just think that this is what Mason Rudolph's going to be. He's going to be a dink and dunk guy that just can kind of game manage. He's not going to be the game changer like Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Ben Roethlisberger, Deshaun Watson, but he's going to be a guy that typically doesn't lose you games. So I don't know. That's the vibe I'm getting. I'm getting Alex Smith early in his career vibes.
I'm not gonna draw like hard conclusions. I just want to see more. It's still early. It's still early in his career, and he's only made a handful of starts. But I'm hoping I can see a little more. I don't want him to complete 26 passes for less than 200 yards. That's kind of what I'm getting at. That's not good enough. That's not a very good stat line. You want to have around 10 yards of completion, if not more. And I feel like I'm not seeing enough from him right now. And again, I'm not saying that he's not the guy. Until I see more, the jury's still out on him from my point of view.
This is Mitch Trubisky numbers.
It's one of those things that I look at, and I always see the first things I see are completions and attempts, and that's great. But how many yards are you throwing for beyond that? That's why yards per attempt is another underrated stat. I like yards per completion better, but I understand how that can get skewed. But it's just one of those things. And again, the dump off with Jalen Samuels was working all game long, so I understand why they did it. Oh, James Washington had a great game, by the way. I know he didn't have a crazy amount of yardage, but I think this was his best game maybe of his entire career.
Made some very clutch catches, including a 40-yard one, which was big. But you would think that those 3 for 19 didn't really matter, but he made them count. A couple of them came on third down, and there were big catches where there was a guy in the face. He did really well, and he caught all 4 of his targets. So he had a very good game. I thought it was going to be his breakout game, which I guess you technically could say. It did stop at only 4 catches, though, but it was still a really good game for him. Basically a breakout game, I'd say. I hope it's a breakout game. I hope he continues from here.
And that's another aspect, is if Rudolph pushes the ball downfield more, we've been saying it the whole time with him, is that's what plays into James Washington's wheelhouse, is attacking deeper down the field. Not necessarily 40 yards down the field, but maybe in the more intermediate range as well. And by the way, I know you just said that Rudolph could be a guy that doesn't lose you games, and he is young, so I understand the growing pains. But that safety he took was 100% a losing play. That was, I think, the worst play he might have had his entire career, besides maybe the interception to Xavier Howard last Monday night. Not a great play. It's just one of those weird things. I felt like he was a really aware kind of guy in the pocket, and this game I didn't feel like he was very aware of what's going on. He was sliding into more sacks, and he took that really difficult safety, which oddly enough ended up as a net and 1 point for the Steelers, but you can't take a safety there.
Yeah, you can't bank on the Colts fumbling on the free kick on the very next play. You just can't. So he definitely held on to it for way too long. He needs to throw that ball away. It was really rough. In the first half, it felt like he was holding onto the ball for way too long, and he was really struggling to find the open guys. Like, the Colts were bracketing Juju a lot early on, and they were actually doing a good job at shutting down Deontay Johnson. I mean, Deontay Johnson didn't play that many snaps, but they did a good job doing that too. But he had to find his other guys, and he was just really struggling to do so. He wasn't finding Vance McDonald really, or struggling to. He couldn't find Vanette. Technically, Holton got targeted once, but that ball was like errant. It wasn't even close to Holton, so it wasn't catchable. It goes down as on the stat sheet as a target, so we're now at 0-7 to Johnny Holton. Just want to throw that in there. He's struggling to find guys downfield, I felt, in this game. It was causing him to hold on to the ball way too long. Looks like he was really struggling. He was just taking that dink and dunk all game because that's all he could really find. It felt like Jalen Samuels was like the guy that was just open and easy to throw to every snap, so that's what he kept coming back to for his bread and butter.
And I remembered not hating what I saw from the offense in the first half, and to their credit, they did move the ball, and they were able to put it together on their first drive of the second half. It was an 11-play, 54-yard drive that resulted in, I believe that was Mason Rudolph's touchdown pass to Vance McDonald. That is what it was. A nice play by McDonald, and as far as an individual effort goes. But the Steelers' remaining drives from that point, excluding their kneel downs, and one drive where they had a 6-play, 67-yard drive, they had 7 yards on 1, 2, 3, 4 drives. So they were able to get 7 yards combined on 4 of their next 5 drives. The one exclusion was a field goal, which was ultimately the game winner, which was aided, I believe, a defensive pass interference call on Marvell Tell of the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know if you remember, I looked at Marvell Tell pre-draft process for the USC Trojans. Do you remember him?
I do remember him, but what I remember most from this game is that PFF ranked him as the Colts' best player that day, or at least on defense. I actually didn't see the Colts graded on offense, but he was their best graded defensive player.
It was very interesting. I noticed he was active. Oh, one other thing that I was thinking about and I haven't asked you yet. What happened to Rocky Yassin? We haven't seen, we talked so much about him pregame. I don't remember hearing his name at all.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really remember now that you mention it. I felt like I saw a lot of Kenny Moore, and that's who I saw the most of. I don't really know. I don't really know what happened with their cornerbacks, what they did. I had to go back and watch again and see who they were mostly using, if they even put Rocky Sin on the field a lot. So I felt like he didn't really come up in this game. You know what's funny? He might have not played. Oh no, I'm sorry. I found him. I can't find him even on the stat sheet. He got 2 tackles, so he did actually play. I don't know if that was special teams or not. But, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know what they actually did with him. I felt like in a way, he couldn't have been too bad if we didn't hear that he was getting dunked on in the game.
Yeah, I suppose so, but I guess at the end of the day, it would seem based on just the broad scope of it is that the Steelers' offense, whatever their plan was, it kind of reverted into a dink and dunk offense, a lot of dump offs to the running backs, and we saw an offense that struggled to run the ball besides an explosive play from Trey Edmonds. And once the Colts keyed in on that in the second half, the Steelers needed a big defensive pass interference call to set up the game-winning score. So ultimately not good enough from an offense against what has ultimately been an average defensive unit. And I say not good enough. It was good enough to win the game, but you do want to see more going forward. I guess where do you start right now? And I mean, obviously you can start with the injuries, but I mean, if you could fix one thing first, what would it be?
I think the wide receivers need the most help because I feel like they've been struggling. I feel like teams have been able to shut them down, and I guess I don't really know if that's Mason Rudolph's fault or if it's their fault. I don't know. It feels like it's mostly on the wide receivers. I feel like they're not playing well enough. They're not getting open enough. But again, this could just be on Mason Rudolph's play recognition and reading who's open or not. But I think if I can improve anything, I'd have a better wide receiver next to Juju at the moment. But that's not really a possibility, or maybe more depth at the position to make it a little bit better. I guess that's the same exact thing. If you're adding a better wide receiver next to Juju, you're getting more depth. But yeah, I think that's the first thing I'd fix. How about you?
Yeah, it'd be something along those lines. Let me ask you, what do you think the answer is regarding the Smith-Schuster? Do you try to get the ball to him a little more? I'm not going to say that this is the case, but I almost feel like Rudolph shied away from him after that interception.
Yeah, maybe. It might have scared him away because it hit him in the hands, and he probably should have come down with it. It was high, but it was thrown into triple coverage, which, again, you could blame that on Mason Rudolph that he was even trying to throw into triple coverage. But it was placed where it needed to be for triple coverage. So, I just think that it might have scared him away. And what do I think for Juju Smith-Schuster? I think he needs to be, established early on. I think he needs to be schemed in because he is still one of the Steelers' best players, even if he's struggling stats-wise. He has been pulling 2 people to cover him in the game. Like I said, the Colts bracketed him in this game. But I feel like I feel like it's just. I feel like Juju just needs to get started going early on, and so it opens up the other wide receivers. But I don't know.
I mean, they tried that. They tried that in this game too. You know, I'm not sure that it's a simple answer. It's an answer that needs to be solved because the offense is so much better when he is producing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I guess this is something that we can try to look into further down the line. But I guess in summation, the offense did move the ball at times. They did what they had to do, but you want to see more going forward. The defense, on the other hand, did pretty much exactly what it needed to do. Now, you can harp on them for giving up 3 passing touchdowns to Brian Hoyer, but at the end of the day, just over 325 yards of offense against, and they got, 2 more turnovers, including the big game 3 turnovers, right? Yeah, 3 turnovers. They had 2 fumble
Special
recoveries.
teams.
Yeah, the one on special teams, a Bud Dupree strip sack, I believe. And there was also of course, obviously, the Minkah Fitzpatrick pick 6. So, the Colts came out and they scored 10 points on their first 2 drives, and it looked like they were about to take over the game right after Brissett got hurt, deep in Steelers territory, and that's where the game changer, Minkah Fitzpatrick, comes in and takes the ball away at the Steelers' 4-yard line and takes it to the house, a 96-yard interception return for a touchdown, the 3rd longest in team history. And, the Fitzpatrick trade continues to pay dividends, and this guy, as we said last week, is the best Steelers safety we've seen since Troy Polamalu, and it's only been 6 games for him. He's been astounding. It's been really a pleasure to watch him play in the black and gold.
Can't say enough, but he's been worth every penny. I don't care what people have to say, because the Steelers are now back at 500, so now people are starting to quiet down and start saying, oh, wow, yeah, the Steelers won that trade, giving up a first that's likely going to land now at 14, right where Minkah Fitzpatrick was drafted, and instead of hoping, ooh, maybe I'll get a Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's like that Family Guy bit. It's like, Minkah Fitzpatrick is Minkah Fitzpatrick, but a 14th overall draft pick can be anything. Could even be Minkah Fitzpatrick. And so that's basically what's happened here, because the Steelers were never going to look at a quarterback. I say never, but of course they're going to do their due diligence, and maybe their guy was there. But they were more than likely going to get a safety or replace Sean Davis with that pick or a pass rusher. So they got one of the positions covered that they were going to get in the first round, in my head, without a doubt. And you've come up with the idea that maybe the guys you wanted aren't there at 14. Maybe they were already taken. So I think the Steelers won this trade. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say they won it. I think that it was a fair trade. I think it was a good trade. They got a cheap safety that's really good, proven, for only a first-round pick and a trade up from the 7th to the 6th, and they got a 4th-round pick out of it. I will take that. I will take that 100 times over. And hopefully the Steelers keep winning and just keep knocking that first-round pick backwards. Just keep making it worse for the Dolphins.
And we've seen week by week the impact that he's made on this defense. As a unit, they've played, so much better since he came into the lineup. I mean, let's go back and look at the schedule week by week now. So his first game was the 49ers game, correct?
I believe so.
And he had who played a part in 2 turnovers in that game as well. So you got 24 against the 49ers in San Francisco. I don't think that's bad. You gave up 3 to Cincinnati at home, 26 to the Ravens at home in overtime, which, remember, the Steelers spotted them a 17-7 lead early due to that Jalen Samuels interception. You got 17 to the Chargers, 14 to the Dolphins, and now 24 to the Colts. They're not elite numbers, but anyone who's watched this defense over the past month plus could agree that the defense has been better, and we already know that they've been carrying the weight most of the year. And if the Colts score right there, which, no offense to Sean Davis, but he's probably not making that play, the Colts probably score a touchdown, and instead of it being a tie game after that Fitzpatrick pick 6, it's 17-3, and the Steelers are probably not coming back, given the fact that we already talked about how the offense was playing in this one. So that right there was huge, and Minka Fitzpatrick has been the MVP of the defense since he was traded for, of course. Not necessarily that he's been the best, but he has been the glue that's kept the secondary together.
Yeah, man, he's currently playing for possibly a Pro Bowl season at the moment. He's playing so well at his spot. Sure, he's made some mistakes, but he's doing really, really well since he's joined the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And the other thing to point out is that he's only getting better. He's still new in the system, and with each passing week, he becomes more acclaimed, I think that's the word, but he's becoming more well-versed in what the defense actually is, and he's getting better because of it, and the defense by proxy is also getting better. And one guy who had another good game as well, I watched this matchup a lot when I was going through the game, was Cameron Hayward and Quentin Nelson, the rising star at guard. Nelson won his matchups, but Cameron Hayward took the young rookie to school. Not rookie, but he took the youngster to school in this one, and it was really impressive to see because, Nelson's a bad man, but Hayward's a seasoned vet, and he taught the youngster a few things.
Yeah, surprisingly, I honestly thought it'd be a more even battle, but I felt like the Steelers' pass rush was beating the Colts O-line pretty handily. I thought they were giving it to him, and obviously you don't want to see it, but the play that Jacoby Brissett got hurt on in this game was because Cameron Hayward walked Quentin Nelson straight back into him. Like, Cameron Hayward destroyed him there, and it was absolutely disgusting. And that happened more than once in the game. And you know what really kind of pisses me off? It feels like Cameron Hayward gets no respect in the NFL. He's a really good defensive lineman, and I guess it's because he doesn't get the stats. But people now know that Quentin Nelson's good, and now we just saw Cameron Hayward destroy them. And I know that sometimes people have bad games, and you can't just go off one game. But Cameron Hayward's been playing at a high level for a while. I feel like he does not get the respect he deserves outside of Steeler Nation. But that's just a mini rant for me. He played well. T.J. Watt did about what we expected T.J. Watt to do. He got 1.5 sacks in this game. Originally had 2, but he got stat corrected down to 1.5 from a half going to Mark Barron for one of those sacks. But then you had Bud Dupree with 2 sacks, and I can't say I expected that. Bud Dupree absolutely went off in this game. He had 3 total tackles for a loss with those 2 sacks. He had another one behind the line of scrimmage, which kept the Steelers in the game. That tackle for a loss is honestly almost as important as his strip sack he had. He gave the Steelers a chance to still stay in this game, stopping them on 3rd down. There's nothing bigger. I can honestly say that even with only 3 tackles, this is probably Bud Dupree's best game of his career. I mean, it's the first time he's won Defensive Player of the Week ever in the NFL for the AFC. So I think that can back it up. So really, the pass rush as a whole just really did well against the Colts all line. And I can't say I thought they would do this well.
Is this duo, Dupree and Watt, is this the best edge rushing duo that we've seen in the NFL this year? Because it might not be the best, but it's pretty darn close the way they're both playing right now.
Yeah, by namesake, I feel like most people would disagree. They'd be like, well, maybe T.J. Watt, but not Bud Dupree. But honestly, can we really name a better duo in the NFL right now? There's a lot of guys that are by themselves are pretty solid, and then maybe they carry someone else. You think of Khalil Mack, who actually hasn't been playing all too great, nothing crazy. You think of Von Miller doing well, which Von Miller didn't come on until later in the year.
Or how about whoever plays on the opposite side of Chandler Jones or something like that?
That too, yeah. Chandler Jones has been nasty this year.
Hey, the guy who starts the Chandler Jones and the guy opposite him combined for 15 sacks this year, and Chandler Jones had 15.
Yeah, dude, exactly. So, duo-wise, I'd honestly probably think so. If you're counting both players equally, if they count for maybe 50% of the grade there. Because can you really make an argument for anyone else right now? Maybe Nick Bosa and DeForest Buckner on the defensive line in 49ers?
You could pick any number of Bosa, Armstead, or Buckner. Or I think if you're going just by namesake, you could talk about, I don't know, I wouldn't agree with this now, but based on just the fact that people know their names better, you could go with the other Bosa brother and Melvin Ingram in Los Angeles just because people already know about them.
Joey's been playing well. Melvin Ingram hasn't been as good.
No, but my point is that a lot of times it's the same thing with Cam Hayward. I remember how you said last year, you reminded me of him when talking about Cam Hayward, is that Chris Jones was really consistent. He was never really that dominant in terms of his numbers. Cam Hayward has that, I think, 1 3-sack game in his entire career, and that was back in 2016 when he missed most of it due to injury. So most of the time he's been a solid guy that doesn't put up crazy numbers, but he's perfect evidence of why you have to watch the tape. It's the little things that he does, the battles that he wins, that makes him an elite defensive lineman. And you're right. I think outside of a couple of years ago when he made the All-Pro team, I feel like he has been disrespected.
Well, 100%. It really feels like no one really considers him a top defensive lineman, even though he is. He is absolutely great for the Steelers, and it just doesn't come up in the stat sheet, so people don't respect him. I don't know, man. It kind of makes me sad.
Oh, one other thing, that strip sack by Bud Dupree, it happened because of Cam Hayward too. To go back and watch the play, if Hayward isn't walking Nelson back into Brian Hoyer, Hoyer's going to step up past Dupree's attempt to strip the ball. So as much credit as we give Dupree as we should for forcing that fumble, Cam Hayward basically boxes in Brian Hoyer and forces him to stand pat as Dupree punches the ball out. So I just wanted to make sure I got that point across as well. What else? I thought Mark Barron had a pretty good game. His he definitely deserved half of that sack. Him and T.J. Watt had perfect moves on that play. If you go back and watch that one, Barron times the blitz perfectly, and Watt has an elite pass rushing move to get by the right tackle there, and they both meet at Hoyer immediately. So that was a great play. So I thought Barron played well. I thought Devin Bush was solid. He did get beat on the touchdown, but I've seen on film on Twitter that the mistake he made on that touchdown was something he corrected later in the game and was able to blanket Jack Doyle on pretty much the same play later in the game, showing that he was able to recover from his mistake and learn from it.
Okay. Yeah, something I just want to interject with quickly because I thought about it while you were talking. There's one set of pass rushers I think I could say has been better, and it's kind of, I fell for the same thing. You know how I just said they're not, how people just don't think of like names, they're not like top names. You know who I think are the best pass rush duo in the league right now?
Do they play for the Patriots?
No, they do not. They play for the Packers.
Oh, the Smith brothers. Yes.
Yeah, Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith have been absolutely nuts. Zadarius has, I believe, 8.5 sacks, and Preston has 8. And here are the stats. He has 9. Zadarius has 9 tackles for a loss, while Preston Smith has 8. So T.J. Watt is at 7.5 sacks with 11 tackles for a loss, so he has more. While Bud Dupree is at 6 sacks with 9 tackles for a loss. So overall, you can make an argument for both, but I think that the Packers do just barely have the Steelers beat, but it's got to be Packers and Steelers. I don't think there's anyone else with a better duo after that.
I think that's quite fair, so I'll definitely give you that one. Back to the defense, though. Terrell Edmunds led the team in tackles. One thing that we didn't mention with Fitzpatrick is I feel like since Fitzpatrick came over, Terrell Edmunds has been quiet, and I don't know that that's a bad thing. I think that, even leading the team in tackles, I feel like he's been pretty solid. I'm trying to remember how I thought of his performance in this one, but I can't seem to find anything written down. I think he's been rock solid, and I think for now that's fine.
He's been serviceable. He hasn't been losing the Steelers games, and that's really all you can ask for. I mean, sure, you kind of hope that he gets a turnover, but this team is turning over the ball at on a crazy level for the Steelers this year. So I can't be mad that he's one of the ones that doesn't have a turnover yet when other people are stepping up and doing it. It's just sometimes there's just not enough to go around, and it's not like last year where we're complaining, wow, no one is stepping up and getting a turnover. No, there's a lot of turnovers happening in these games. There's guys forcing fumbles. There's guys getting interceptions. Just, you can't get them all.
I will say that, though, if there is one criticism of his game, I guess that would be it, and you just hope at some point he's able to come down with 2. I just want him to double his output from last year, because remember, he just had 1. So A little nitpicky with the defense, I understand. But, I guess bend but don't break. They did give up the 3 touchdowns to Brian Hoyer, but they only gave up the 2. Oh no, it was just 1 touchdown after, 2 touchdowns after the Fitzpatrick pick six, 1 immediately following that, and then 1 more at the end after the Jalen Samuels fumble. The defense did bend on that. That was an interesting sequence there at the end of the game, right before that Adam Vinatieri field goal attempt where there was that defensive pass interference and both teams, challenged the pass interference, and it was just, I remember you were texting me about it, and I was like, why did not one but both coaches try to challenge that? And I understand why Mike Tomlin did it looking back at it, just because it was such a huge play, but at the same time, you have to know that that's not going to get overturned.
And after all, Mike Tomlin said he doesn't know what the actual rule is because it's not clear. You just got to stop challenging it. I know that it's nitpicky because we saw the Terrell Edmonds one get turned into pass interference when it looked sort of similar to the one that happened, the first one that Mike Tomlin challenged. But you just don't know. You're never going to know. It's not worth it to challenge it. You're going to lose timeouts. And in this game, it almost came back to bite them when he killed 2 timeouts in a 2-minute span. It was really, really rough. So I was almost so mad at Mike Tomlin in this game because he nearly blew it away. And honestly, we'll never know if it would have been blown away. If Adam Vinatieri didn't miss that kick, the Steelers didn't get a little bit lucky, we wouldn't actually know how missing the 2 timeouts, wasting them on plays like that would have affected this. But, I guess it works out in the end. But definitely got to stop just challenging those. If it's bad, it's bad, and you got to accept it and move on and try and go from there. But for now, it's not something that should be a challenge should be wasted on unless it's literally the guy is grabbing at his arm and thrashing it backwards. It's got to be super clear.
It's got to be Nickel Roby-Coleman on Tommy Lee Lewis.
Exactly, dude.
So that it comes down to that final kick, that defensive pass interference. Oh, one more thing, that defensive pass interference on Steven Nelson. I didn't think he was bad, but I thought this was his worst game of the season.
Oh, without a doubt. I thought it was kind of surprising. I didn't think that he would be a problem in this game, but he actually did have his worst game of the season, and it wasn't a rough play, but getting that call in that situation was the worst play he's had all season. The ball was way, way out of reach, so he had to locate that ball. It's not exactly his fault that he couldn't get his head around. He was actually kind of beat on that play, so I understand him trying to save the touchdown because he didn't know where the ball was, but it was still his worst play because that ball was uncatchable, and you force that, basically the game's over.
Yeah, so going into that situation, I'm trying to remember because you were texting me and I was walking out of New Era Field. Your thoughts on the whole Adam Vinatieri situation. Did you think he was going to miss? I mean, this is Adam Vinatieri after all, or was there still kind of a glimmer of hope because you're he has struggled this year?
I actually did have a glimmer of hope of Vinatieri missing. Right before that happened, I was there's a chance. The Steelers still have a chance. Even if he hits it, there's still 1 timeout and a little bit of time to go. So, I do think that I had it in my head that Vinatieri could possibly miss there.
Man, oh man. It was a roller coaster ride for sure, but Vinatieri shanks it. In no small part due to a terrible hold in which the laces were pointed in at Vinatieri, and then he, had a little divot there before he hit the ball, and the ball went sailing wide left. Kind of reminiscent of the Mike Vanderjagt miss in the 2006 AFC divisional round when he pushed the ball so far he missed the net on potential game-tying kick. It was a very similar feeling hearing that he missed, and I'm sure for Steelers fans that watched, seeing just how far away he missed. But the Steelers definitely not playing their best game, but come away with the win. Their 3rd in a row and their 4th in 5 weeks. Their 4th in 5 games, I should say. And they're back to 4-4. And, as easily as you could say, what would the narrative be if the Steelers lost this game, because they could have. I think you could just as easily say, what if the Steelers had beaten the Ravens, and then all of a sudden they'd be 5-3 instead of 4-4. So at the end of the day, I think the Steelers are just about where they should have been. They won a game they should have lost probably, and they've lost a game they probably should have won. So I think, all things considered, the Steelers are right where they should be right now.
But yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I really think that the Steelers are in a good spot right now. I feel like, something we should mention is that the Steelers are basically fighting for a wild card now. Neither the Seahawks or Patriots did the Steelers a favor, and the Ravens are essentially going to run away with this division. But in good news, teams that are fighting for it right now, Colts are, if the playoffs started today, Colts are in the second playoff spot behind Buffalo. And what's even better is currently the Raiders are 4-4 with Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh has a tiebreaker. I forget why. But currently, as we speak, the Chargers just scored a touchdown on them and are up 23-20. Yes, 23-20. And so, and the Chargers have Steelers have the tiebreaker over the Chargers as well. So this is going about as perfectly as you'd want right now. So things are looking good. You're essentially hoping that the Texans win the division at the moment for AFC South, so that and that the Colts just continue losing here, so that, because Steelers have a lot of tiebreakers with the teams surrounding here. And so everything's looking okay for now, but fighting for that wild card spot at the moment, it seems.
Yeah, and if there is a game you can afford to lose, it actually is this week's game. Not in terms of the division, if you're still holding on to that, because, of course, the Ravens continue to win. But that being the case, if you can lose a game, this would be the week to lose it against an NFC opponent.
And it wouldn't actually affect the narrative all too much, because the Rams are considered a good team, whether they're 5-3 right now, so that's at least decent. So they can drop this game because it's an NFC game, but the Steelers need to win out against AFC teams, and especially their divisional opponents, if they really want to make a chance at getting to that wild card slot.
Did you expect, or was there any part of you that thought the Steelers could win 4 out of 5 when they were sitting at 0-3?
No, not really. I didn't think the offense was going to ever get to where it needed to be, and I wasn't exactly a believer in the defense keeping up what they were doing with the turnovers, but the offense really hasn't improved. However, the defense has really stepped it up with the turnovers, and the points after the turnovers have improved since then, so I do think that it's been great. And you kind of look at it, you now see how powerful the 49ers are. That kind of set a narrative early on for the Steelers that would how bad they actually would be. But the 49ers are a powerhouse, and the Steelers were so close to beating them, and that makes you just kind of feel good about going forward. I mean, at the time, like I said, I didn't think the Steelers would get here. I didn't think the Steelers would get to 4-4 or 4-5 possibly next week. I thought they would have been losing more, but hey, here we are.
Well, remember, until last week's game against the Arizona Cardinals on a Thursday night game in Arizona, which, remember, that always favors the home team, the Steelers put up more points against the 49ers than any other team in the league in a single game this year.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. The two teams that have done best against the 49ers have been the Steelers and the Cardinals now. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, so, and that was also Mason Rudolph's first start. So remember, we were complaining about the Steelers' offensive line against the 49ers in that game. Well, no one else has been able to contain them either.
Yeah, so it's not been too bad.
So it's all context, and as we were talking about going into this game, the Steelers' record the record of the teams the Steelers had lost to was really good, and the record of the teams the Steelers had beaten was really bad. So this was a good litmus test, and again, they didn't play very well, but they got the win, and good teams find ways to win when they aren't playing their best, and that this game was a perfect example of that. The defense just needs to keep doing what it's doing, and on the offensive side, just limit those mistakes and continue improving. So, week by week, I guess, is how we go. Now, even though they're 4-4, I wouldn't go buying Super Bowl tickets today, but there is renewed hope for the playoffs, which is something I don't think anyone expected when they were sitting at 0-3 and especially 1-4, getting ready to go into a Sunday night football game in Los Angeles with Devlin Hodges at quarterback.
Yeah, no, it didn't look good at all, for sure. And but here we are. Steelers are definitely still in this. There's still quite a few weeks to go. I mean, it's going fast. We're already getting to, I believe, week 10. This is week 10 that's just started Thursday night, right?
Correct.
Or is this week 9?
It's
Yeah,
week
okay,
10.
Week 10. So there's still quite a few games left. Anything can happen. If Steelers could win 4 out of the 6, I think that they're in good shape. I'm sorry, did I say 4 out of 6? I meant 4 out of 7. I think they're in good shape to make the playoffs here. I think that they could do it with just 9-7 possibly. It's going to be tough, but
This season hasn't been easy for sure. You want to hear one thing that's interesting is that the Steelers only have 3 games left against teams with winning records as of right now. And one of them is this Sunday.
And if they win this, I mean, it's not really big in the grand scheme of things, but it's big for, I guess, mostly the narrative. That's what this game is. If the Steelers can win this game, first of all, it's going to send the Rams down, a lot of people, and then the people are going to be like, well, maybe the Steelers actually can compete after so many people rolled them out. You guys don't understand, listeners, how many screenshots I have of people saying the Steelers are going to go 4-10 and 6-7. I was like, no, they're going 9-7, and people denied that. I am so ready to use these screenshots and say they did it without their starting quarterback. Because I said this stuff before the season. People were ready to end the Steelers before the season even started, and here they are with their backup quarterback. They're one of their best pass rushers out for the season, and they're still going. So,
Alrighty, we'll be back later in the week to preview the Steelers and Rams game coming up in Week 10 of the NFL season, and we'll also talk more about what happened last week in the NFL. This is a bit of an abbreviated episode, so thank you for your patience. And Austin, thank you so much for joining me as always. And Week 10 of the NFL season is upon us. Anything new in the Raiders Chargers game? This could be the last primetime game in Oakland, right?
I believe so. I don't know if they have another one for this year, but so all that happened is that the Chargers kicked the PA team, got it, so it's 24-20. Raiders have the ball with 2 minutes left. I just wanted to say, check us out on Twitter. I know we're going to say that in a second, but we did predict this game, we didn't get the podcast out in time. So check us out on Twitter. We post when we don't get the podcast out. We do have our predictions for Pick'em on there, so we did make our Pick'em picks for this game before the game happened. But I just wanted to check you out there. And elsewhere in the game, it's just Melvin Gordon has had his first 100-yard rushing game since 2018, I believe. Since 2018. And it's kind of crazy. I didn't think he'd be doing this good. I thought he wouldn't return to form, but I mean, I guess how it happens when you rush 22 times in a game.
Indeed. But anyways, you can find that at Stronger_Steel. We both took the Raiders in this one. If you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com and check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. And Austin, thank you for joining me again today. We'll be back later in the week to talk Steelers-Rams next week. Have a great day, everybody.
Good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.